Someone's choking me. I'm not thinking about my bills. I'm like, my baby's gonna stay with me the whole time, and she didn't, obviously. And you know what I mean? Like, my cat died, and all kinds of stuff would happen, and I would just be wrecked.
Your brain, the primitive, I thought, so that is the one thing that in horror movies, the white guys don't have, right? They're like, hey, Jason, come over here, let's go be friends.
I guess I'm confident in my abilities to, if I turn my back to the door, it's almost like I wish somebody would.
No, I get that. I
You know
feel
what I'm
that
saying?
sometimes, yeah.
Like, try me.
Yeah.
You know, I've been waiting for this moment.
Yeah.
So it's,
What's up, everybody? Chad from All Roads Lead to the Gym here at Indy Fitness. As usual, we got my man Nicholas Otto Assad. You guys
up?
might remember Matt Foreman from episode
Six.
Episode 6. Asked him to come back today, like I told you guys that we would have him back. And today we also have a special guest, Megan Brown. So Megan, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm a mental health therapist. I've been working in mental health for 15 years. I've been licensed now going on my 13th year, I believe. Worked in crisis, outpatient, and then I briefly ran the substance abuse department.
Oh man, I forgot to take my gum out. I always do that before we get started because
Me too.
I chomp on it while I'm. Anyway, Marco, if you want to edit that out, great. If you don't, that's cool too.
Please don't.
Okay.
Please don't edit that.
All right. So the reason that we brought you here today, and I've been thinking about this since the beginning, is about kind of hit on mental health for exercise to help with your mental health. My wife had went to a conference this early in the summer, a mental health, she's a principal, and she went to a mental health workshop for how to deal with mental health issues in the school system. And I absolutely don't know the details of it.
Sure.
But the one thing that she's pointed out a couple of times was not one time in that seminar or that workshop was mentioned anything about exercise, physical activity, and mental health. And so that really intrigued me and got me thinking, you know, because I've spent 30 years now between the Marine Corps, fire department, and now law enforcement dealing with trauma, which I believe has given me PTSD. I've never been diagnosed. And then
Not formally.
we got Matt over here who spent time in the Navy and also in private contracting, in war,
Yes.
in war zones.
Yes.
And then we have Otto. We've talked a lot about his story. Has spent a significant amount of his life in prison, and just the things that you deal with day in and day out, the mind games, the worrying, is today the day.
Yeah.
And so we have all turned to some sort of fitness to self-medicate ourselves for our mental health issues. And so I just wanted to talk to you today and kind of get your thoughts on, you know, we're an open book here. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to know, anything we want to talk about, there's no rules. We can talk about whatever we want. So,
Okay.
you know, what are your thoughts on exercise versus medication?
I think it depends on the situation and where you're at. I'm not a huge medication pusher, at least not initially. But trying to think how to say it. Exercise is something that can be implemented on your own right away versus having to wait for a psychiatrist or your primary care doctor, which can take quite a while to get into. The other thing about medication, most mental health medication, you're not going to see a pretty instant result. Exercise, you almost immediately get the feel-good chemicals going, And so you're going to feel a result very quickly.
Do you know the science behind why the chemicals, you feel them instantly, or the feel-good chemicals, as you call them, or hormones, or?
Like which chemicals are drugs?
Yeah, like. So, what is the science behind I go out here and do an hour-long workout?
Mm-hmm.
The effect on my body is caused by what?
Okay, so adrenaline's one thing. Exercise helps kind of push out some adrenaline. Should I explain what adrenaline is?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Okay, so adrenaline is usually produced for sure always in situations where your body or your brain feels like it could be dangerous, but it also can be in like really fun stuff too. So the people that love adrenaline, skydiving, roller coasters, all of that kind of stuff, but exercise gives you a decent level, but not so high that your body is just ready to, it can't calm down. So it gives you a good moderate dose without going so high that
you're in fight or flight or.
Yeah, and I think everyone who's had a traumatic experience can feel after the huge adrenaline dump, how drained and depleted you feel afterwards. Like, it's really hard to function after something like that. Exercise, you might be tired, but it's not that same high level of adrenaline. The other thing it really produces is dopamine, which is your feel-good chemical. It is the basics of, I like this.
So it gives you that temporary high.
Absolutely. And then the benefits, of course, self-esteem, better physical health, all of those things go with it too.
So Matt, if you want to talk a little bit about how exercise helps you, because we talked a little bit, me and you have talked before a little bit about mental health issues, and you've really gotten into jiu-jitsu, and I know you're into a lot of body weight exercises, right? You do a lot of like CrossFit type exercises.
Yeah.
What makes you drawn to those type of exercises or the jiu-jitsu versus like heavy weightlifting?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, I think that when I'm doing jiu-jitsu or when I'm doing a very strenuous workout, I can't focus on outside stress of life. Like if someone's choking me, I'm not thinking about my bills. I'm not thinking, so it's kind of like a temporary, I get to go in my own little world and, I get to be happy there, or I get to have solvable problems. Like in the gym, I get to like put check marks on the workouts that I did, and that's like one of my favorite things to do. Like I did that, I did this. In jiu-jitsu, I get to constantly solve and get problems that are solvable. And then in life, it's, for me anyways, sometimes it's not that simple. Like I get all these different problems and it's like, how do I prioritize them? And so sometimes life can be extremely overwhelming to where the gym is simple. Pick up the weight, So that's kind of my mindset on that.
Two different kinds of checklists.
Yeah, right.
So, and Otto, when I met Otto when he was in jail, and then he left jail and went to prison, we had made a deal before he left to go that once he got out, if he wanted to get himself right, to show up here at the gym and I would give him his first month for free.
Yep.
Which led to him showing up right after he got out.
It's my gym. No.
And we, I didn't know him very well, but we slowly built that trust in each other.
Yeah.
He's used to hating cops, right? Like that's that world, right?
Couldn't tell.
And we built a trust and ultimately a very good friendship.
Yes.
But while you were in prison, it's not like you were just sitting around in your cell waiting till you got to come to the gym. When you got here, you were already in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
So, what is the mentality of the prison when you work out in prison?
Okay, so how do I explain it? There's multiple, all sorts of people go to prison. You know what I mean? There's like the hardcore gangster types, there's just the regular guys who are addicted to drugs, and regardless, you're all going into the same place, you know, and then it's like the jungle, you know what I mean? Like the more gangster types prey on the weaker ones. And though I like met myself in the middle by hitting the weights all the time, so I kind of got my respect there, how I am nonstop lifting weights here. People kind of notice it and they either leave me alone or they're like, oh, hey, how's it going, you know? It was like prison was hard on me. Like it was, I could front like I'm some badass dude or something, but really it was like at any point in time when I was a badass dude in there, like it was mentally breaking me down, and I was doing things that I didn't agree with all the time. So I started just taking up every free yard time I had. I was on the weight pile from the opening of yard to closing a yard. I was not on the phone very much. Sometimes I would get letters and not even read them because I was just trying to get through it. You know what I mean?
So when you say that's pretty heavy that you would get a letter and not read it.
Yeah, because there's two ways of doing time. Like you can do time and be on the phone worried about your girl or someone, you know what I mean, or doing this and that, and she's running around, or you could worry about your things that are either getting repoed or stolen or what, you know what I mean? Or you can just like this, you can realize that like this is your world right now, and so you have to stay in this and be attentive to what's going on around you while incarcerated. And so like overdoing, like the 9 years is broken up into 4 different prison sentences, and like the first one was like, I'm like 19 or 20 and I'm like, my baby's gonna stay with me the whole time, and she didn't, obviously, and then, you know what I mean? Like my cat died and all kinds of stuff would happen and I would just be wrecked. So like over time I just like realized like once the judge sentences me to a certain amount of time, like it's time to, I'm sure that you guys can relate, like once you're going to do whatever you're going to do, you know, like a mission or an objective or something, like you're zoned in on how to complete that the best way possible. Sorry, I'm not the best with words, but so once the judge tells me 3 years, 4 years or something, like I really kind of zone in on how to walk through the couple years properly, get as big as possible, eat as much as possible, not get hurt as much as possible.
And when you say not get hurt, do you mean by like the hand of other people? Are you talking about lifting weights or?
Yeah, other people. Like you got to think. So this area, let's say we go to Hutch Max. There's like 10 people out of the thousands that are from this area or anywhere around here. So like you're in a whole different. Oh, hey man, I remember you from Coffeyville. Like no, you don't see that. So you're just nobody knows you. You could be a killer, and I could look like a dude that 5 years ago ripped you off for money. I could just look like him, and you think he's gonna come up thinking that, you know what I mean? He's not gonna come, are you this man? You know what I mean? Like, no, they're literally just gonna like catch you from the back and do, you know what I mean? So you just always have to be like
on high alert.
Oh God, it's insane, dude. Like it's.
So in law enforcement, I went to when I went to this, I talked to you about it, the PTS seminar, but they talk about, they use the analogy of like a stoplight where you have your red, yellow, and green. So when a police officer or a fireman is in fighting a fire, they're on red. Like hyper awareness.
Yeah.
Where you have to be completely alert all the time, and because you could die if you make a mistake, or you could get one of your brothers killed. And I know in your episode you talked a lot about, you know, being there, being ready because you didn't want something to happen to one of your guys.
Right.
And so we stay on red. And then when we're like, say, at a restaurant, a police officer or a soldier. They call people in the Navy not soldiers. Are they
sailors?
Sailors. Okay.
Okay.
You don't want when you go to a restaurant, we don't want our back to the door, right? We want to be able to see the enemy as it confronts us. We don't want them to be able to walk up behind us. So, and then when you're at home, sometimes you're on green where you can relax. But I feel like I never get to green. Very rarely do I get to green. But when you were telling your story there, I felt like, man, 24 hours a day.
Bro, it's so rough.
You're on red. 24 hours a day on. You're never even on yellow.
It makes me, and the difference in, like, I put myself, what's hard on me is I put myself there due to my mistakes, right? So now I'm locked in. Like, you guys signed up for it as a career path or to make a difference, or you know what I mean? So that's a little bit more motivation to be like, I would get to the point where I would be so tired of feeling that like, it's like my adrenaline's going and now the door locks and I really am in here by myself, you know what I mean? But it just won't go away. And then I've realized that now, like every time I've gotten out before, I went back to the drug life and stuff like that. But this time, just going back to, or not even going back to normal life, because I really haven't had a super normal life, but now I have one. And still, a lot of the day, like, it just won't shut off, dude. Like, I mean, I just started therapy, like, last week.
Hey, good for you.
Yeah, and I got blood work done and hormone work, and I'm waiting to find out what's going on, because I just can't, like, I'm always, the looking around at possible threats happens in the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like, it happens anywhere, and I mean, I lay down and, like, I just can't stop thinking about stuff, and
But
so
you
it
know,
kind of jacked me up, dude.
you kind of know, because you'd catch a lot of flack from people from your old life about hanging out with me, being on the podcast, working here at the gym. So
Yeah.
you
I'm
know,
kind of a big guy, so like they pick and choose the things that they say.
yeah, I mean, I'm not, you know, but you just kind of you get that, you know, and
I
so
do, yeah.
there's a lot of people that don't like me because
Fair.
I've put my fair share of people in prison. Family members of other. When I say I put them there, meaning they did the crime. All
Yeah.
I did was work the case.
Right.
You know, and give it to the attorneys, and they fought it out, and this person got a prison sentence. And a lot of people look at me as if I'm responsible for that.
Right.
So I don't pull up to a gas station in this town or in this county without looking around before I get out of the car to see who's there, who might be a possible threat, you know. So
Yeah.
I know we've just given you a lot there.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Now you know us a little bit.
So like the red light, green light, amber thing, what's your thoughts on that?
I have so many thoughts.
Well, go
Okay.
and go.
Okay. So what you're explaining really is the basis of how the human body is supposed to work, that green, yellow, red feeling. Part of the issue is, well, let me back up a little. So when we're looking at how our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, all of that stuff works, you really have to look at different parts of the brain and how that interacts. Is this too much?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. So the amygdala is a really big part of all of this, and so it is. It's considered more of our primitive brain. So before humans evolved, if you believe, I do, but if you believe in that, so the amygdala is the one that kept you safe. It was the one that, you know, there's something going on, I need to act accordingly. So the amygdala is the big part of what activates in traumatic situations. The other big part is your prefrontal cortex. It's gonna look that up real quick. Pretty confident, but I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Okay.
I wrote it down.
Prefrontal
Okay.
cortex.
Nope.
Yep,
That sounds right.
2 seconds.
It does.
I'm pretty confident it is, but then I'm like, prefrontal? Does that?
Feel free to leave your phone out too if you want to look at it.
Okay.
You know, it's not gonna.
I believe in you.
Thank you.
We're not going to
Yeah,
fact check
I was
you.
when she was talking about that part of your brain, the primitive. I thought so. That is the one thing that in horror movies the white guys don't have, right? They're like, "Hey, Jason, come over here. Let's go be friends." Like,
I love it, dude.
Get strangled with the cordless phone.
Okay, yep, sorry.
so, yeah, go ahead.
So prefrontal cortex, it is like a higher level part of our brains. They say that's what distinguishes us from other mammals, is the prefrontal cortex. So that's your reasoning, problem solving, logic, stuff like that. The problem with PTSD is you, over time, typically you get stuck, the amygdala takes over, And so you're stuck in your amygdala brain, not up here. Like you could be in the bathroom knowing you're safe and there's no threat, but that doesn't matter. Your brain and your body are kind of stuck and they don't know the difference. So you see that quite a bit. Like you mentioned, you try to just go home and chill, but you're stuck in the red. That's kind of what happens a lot of times is you get stuck in the red, or you're not even aware you're in the red. You feel kind of like you're okay, but then something that's not even traumatic or stressful happens. It does, and it still sends your body into that same level of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
I know.
So
Stop reading you're reading me.
So, I've often thought that I have been through a lot of traumatic things.
yeah,
And that I have a really bad case of PTSD. But as you sat here and explained this, my guy Otto here, man, I mean, sometimes I'll trigger something in him without any intention of that whatsoever. And I think that's a lot of just like always being stuck on red.
Yeah.
I will say that I feel like I get to yellow from time to time.
I wig out.
I don't feel like I ever get to green. What about you, Matt? Do you feel like you're able to get to green?
I think my situation might be a little bit different because when we would go on deployment, like you're in the red constantly. Well, at least I was. And then when we would come home, it's not like I have to look over my shoulder at a gas station. Like when we're home, like I understand that the terrorists are still overseas. Like when we get to come home, majority of us get to the yellow. So I can sometimes separate it. So like, do I ever get to green? I don't think so, but I think I know I get to yellow for sure. So just because like when I go to the grocery store, I'm hyper focused or I'm aware of my surroundings, but I don't have to. I guess I'm confident in my abilities to if I turn my back to the door, it's almost like I wish somebody would.
No, I get that. I feel that sometimes. Yeah.
Like try me.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this moment.
Yeah.
So it's like a different switch, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'll give you that if I can, take care of this.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
Yeah,
makes
no,
sense.
it does. I mean, we've all heard the saying, woke up this morning wishing a motherfucker would.
Yeah.
And mostly that's because we feel like we have, I think the basis behind that saying is that we all have a lot of pent up anger and frustration that we, in a normal society, we cannot just unleash when we need to. Like when you're busting down a door in a foreign country looking for a terrorist and there's an AK-47 pointed at you, you get to unleash your frustrations, right?
Yeah, I would say.
But you can't do that at the grocery store.
No.
You're not supposed to.
Otto and I would have been friends a long time ago.
I can't own a firearm.
So, I mean, there's a lot here. I know you're probably sitting here like, these three guys are freaking jacked up. But one thing that I want you to kind of talk about, because I don't know the answer. Mm-hmm. I think I do, but I don't know. There are, in my opinion, and you tell me if I'm wrong because you're the expert we have here.
Why'd you do this?
You're the expert we have here today.
Don't you mean expert?
You are the expert.
No quotations?
Without the quotations.
Without the quotations. So PTSD, in my opinion, can be caused by multiple things, like a lot of small traumas or like one big event.
I want to talk about this so much.
Do you?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. So either or is the answer. When we look at, like when I'm asking clients about trauma, sometimes they don't even know how to answer that because what qualifies as trauma? Originally, it was founded, created, whatever, learned by veterans. I mean, that's the roots of it because they were noticing this pattern specifically in veterans. But really, when you really look at it, most of the time, most of the people that I've met with a mental health disorder, not even necessarily PTSD, all goes back to trauma. Like you said, all roads lead to the gym. I mean, all roads really lead to trauma quite a bit with that. But it can be either or. So for some people, it's that big event. Typically what happens though, if you have a decent support system, those big events aren't as impactful because the people know it happened, and you kind of have your team that kind of helps you through it. Those little events, it's more you're just expected to deal with it. And we've talked about that a lot with law enforcement. You didn't really necessarily get a cool down. You had a stressful call, and then you had to go on to the next. You weren't really given time to decompress. So I think over time, that buildup really creates it. Same with your situation, I'm sure. You didn't really get a time where you knew, like, I'm safe. It was just this to that to that. And so that can really make it happen. Kids that grow up in unstable homes, for sure, you know, they don't know when their parents are going to react, or so they don't get that necessarily that cool down time. And I feel like that cool down time is a big piece of it.
So, you know, this isn't my scenario. I've heard this in it from a couple different seminars, PTSD talks that I've been to, where they talk about how a police officer may pull someone over and the person gets says a smart aleck remark, and the police officer just reacts.
Yes.
Unprofessionally at times. The thing that the person that's being pulled over, they're like, all I said was one smart aleck thing, and he just went off on me, and I agree that that's unprofessional, but what they don't know is that what you may have just came from.
Absolutely.
You may have literally left a call where someone was beating their child or beating their spouse, and they're arguing and bickering back and forth, and you finally get them separated, and now they're mad at you because you're taking their husband away and putting them in jail or whatever after and then dispatch calls out, hey, you need to go over here and talk to somebody about their gnome being stolen out of their garden, and you go over there and you're like, really? Like, and so they don't understand that what you've just dealt with. And I'm not making excuses for police officers or firefighters who have just been through a traumatic experience. That doesn't give them the right to be mean to other people or treat them a certain way. But I just want to say that sometimes that's the situation. And, one of the things that I had told Matt before when we talked initially about mental health disorders and what we've been through in our careers is people ask me sometimes, why do I not just get out? If it's so traumatic to me, why do you not just get out? And of course, there's the financial reasons, the insurance and the retirement and all that. But more than that is sometimes I feel like if I stay here in this situation, then I'm saving someone else's son or daughter from having to deal with the things that I deal with, because they're not going to be able to get a job because I'm holding it down. And so they're going to go work somewhere else where they don't have to deal with the things that I deal with.
Sure.
And so sometimes I feel like it would be selfish of me to leave.
I mean, your logic is wrong on that, but I get where it's coming. Like, I get, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and you know it. Intellectually, that's not going to be the case, but I think it's noble. That's kind of where your thoughts go. I think, honestly, with law enforcement, I see a lot because they tend to have that exterior. When they would come see us in crisis, usually it wasn't for anything too big, but to us it was because we had no power to do anything with it. And so I would get met with that, like, really, Megan, you're calling us out here for this? And so initially I would get offended, but then when I really got to know law enforcement, it helped me really understand the why. Underneath that tough exterior, generally, there's a few cases where I'm like, I don't know about this guy. But most of them I met, once you really talk to them, they were like a puddle.
You're like,
inside.
really, this person is broken, right? Like, that's...
Well, and I wouldn't even say broken, right? Because I've seen so many people, like, you guys think you're like super severe, but you know what I mean? In the grand scheme of things, you're not at all. I mean, and that's not to down what you've experienced, right? But you guys have at least enough resilience that you've kind of gotten back up and done the things. And so you've been enough to admit that you struggle, you start therapy, you do what works for you to actually feel better. And so to me, that makes a big difference. I've met a lot of people that just aren't there and may not ever be.
So also I want to talk a little bit about the stigma.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like military-wise, about feeling as if you're able to talk about your feelings of how things affect you. I can imagine in prison, you're not going to tell your cellie like,
What feelings?
bro, I am so broken inside. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I'm afraid. Not see, and I don't even. I'm even hesitant to say afraid because I don't want to cast a shadow on you as like you're in fear. Even though there's got to be some level of fear, but like for law enforcement, we've discussed this. Cops do not want to tell you their problems because they're afraid that they're going to lose their job.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, law enforcement that I've worked with, until they really know that I'm a safe person and I'm not trying to make them lose their job or make sure they get their gun taken away, because that's what I hear a lot. Even some of the military people are like, how far up will this go? I can't let them know that or I'll lose my job. So I think that struggle is very real. Even, on the other side of things, people that aren't in law enforcement, but maybe like that used to be in your situation, I have to report things. And so they're like, well, what are you going to report? Are you going to tell the whole court my stuff? Are you going to tell the probation officer? And so I think that's a big part of it. Stigma in general is huge of mental health still, right? Which is baffling to me because our most intricate organ in our body has the same type of issues of any other part, but we look at that as weird. We don't look at someone that has diabetes as weird for managing their chronic condition. That's what mental health is a chronic condition. So finding ways to manage it, including exercise, right, matters a lot because it's you have to keep it in remission.
So exercise happens to be my therapy.
Yes.
One of our friends last night, when we were talking, referred to it as Iron Church.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, last night.
I like that.
Last night we were all hanging out together, and I think it might have been right after you left. Garrett was talking about seeing me at Iron Church.
No, that's cool. I like that.
And so it is a great therapy for me, and exercise for these two in different ways has been
We're all different.
Yeah.
When it comes to, like, we're all into fitness, but like
into different kinds of things.
Yeah, right.
But what other things besides going to a therapist could we do to help with our mental health, like self-medication type things?
Well, first of all, for PTSD, I'm going to say therapy is actually the number one. And I only say that because talk therapy really works, and here's why. When you're looking at trauma, it's kind of like a big, bright light. The goal is, now trauma is never going to go away. Like, you're not going to forget it. If you do, then that's actually a symptom of PTSD. It's trouble forgetting important events.
going in circles here.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, but short of that, you just want your light to get dim so that you're not stuck in the red. And so the goal is that dimness. Talking really is the best way to dim that light. All of the other things really help. So exercise helps with reducing cortisol levels. That matters. Talk really helps. Making sure you're eating healthy, sleeping well. All of that stuff really matters. Spending time doing activities you like. I think that's overlooked a lot. When I'm talking to people in therapy, I'm like, well, what are you doing for fun? And they're like, well, I don't know, like
That's
nothing.
tough. I think that's tough because I have personally experienced times where I used to like doing certain things,
Yes.
and then I just don't have the drive or the motivation to go do them anymore.
Yes.
Like, we were just talking about coaching football before. You know, I used to coach, and then I was losing my enjoyment. It was becoming work, and it just was so stressful. And I can translate that to different areas of my life, like during the military and after that, I just was slowly losing more and more of my life. Like, so how do you get those back?
And maybe it's a different back sometimes. So maybe it's not coaching anymore, but maybe you find you really like even small listening to music. Part of it, and coaching's different because you have all those external pressures from parents and things, I'm sure, that play a huge role.
Never had a parent yell at me.
Right. I was at 5th grade football yesterday, and I saw how intense that is. So, yeah. But other types of activities, more like the solo ones, part of it is kind of pushing yourself to do it even when you don't feel like it. Most of the time when I really am like, I just want you to try it just for 10 minutes, they slowly start to get that back. If they don't, then it's time definitely for a new hobby, be it reading, listening to music, writing music, any of that stuff. Just something that you
I
can
knew
call
we were
yours.
going to be rappers, bro.
Yeah, sure.
Starting
I don't know that I'd buy it, but do it.
Tour.
But any of that stuff, helpful. But something you can call your own really matters. And I think that's part of what exercise is to you.
It is.
Just for knowing you, you've always been able to call it your own.
Yeah.
Is there a point to kind of like what I was talking about before, is I can get so focused in on working out that I completely ignore my life problems.
Yeah.
And like that was, I guess I wanted that more and more and more, but then I just kept ignoring, and that the problems kept building up, you know? So it almost became negative that I would go to the gym so much because I wouldn't attend to those problems, or I wouldn't help like manage those problems anymore.
I think with anything, balance really matters. And so you can't necessarily go hard just on one thing. In Addiction Group, I talked a lot about, if you're holding up a lot of balloons, you want to be able that if people clipped your balloons, you still are okay. You still have a big bouquet of balloons to rely on. So putting everything into one or two things, if those get clipped, it's a bad deal. I see it a lot with really putting yourself into one person, relationship-wise, and then when that one person doesn't work out, then what? So that just calling something your own, I think, really matters.
I think that happens, not to cut you out, but
No,
I think
go.
that happens a lot with athletes and guys in the military or law enforcement, is your whole life you want to be a football player. And then once you can't play football anymore, it's like, what's your identity? You know, so one of my really good friends, Brett Keene, he said, name 5 things about you that's not football related, you know, and then why would a girl date you, you know? So if they're all football, why aren't they dating someone else on the team? You know, and that kind of made me realize that I put my identity so far into the military that like that's all I did, you know, and that's who I was. My friends were in the military. Like I consumed, there was no work-life balance. It was all work. And like I just didn't have any time to relax, like no time to just kind of soak up my life. It was just constantly military the whole time, you know, and then that was my identity. And once I got out, I struggled really hard. Like even to this day, I struggle. Like who am I, you know?
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge piece of it too. I know I've talked to Chad about this, but statistically, law enforcement and first responders struggle the most when they retire because of that loss of identity, that sense of belonging that you have with the people you're with. Even, your old friends that maybe weren't the best influence, but you still had them. Yeah. And so there is, speaking to the loss of that, it is a big deal. Some people do get very involved in their titles and in what they have going for them. career-wise, that when that goes away, it's like, then who am I?
You know, we've done, I think this is episode 12 or 13, whatever it is. I have never sat in this chair and self-reflected
I can
so
tell.
much
I can tell.
during an episode.
Yeah.
And there was a reason that I asked you to be here, because so many times when you would be helping me out with a case or something, we would have these kind of talks, quasi-therapy sessions. And so there's something about you that makes me self-reflect a whole bunch. I was thinking when Matt was telling his story about losing his interest in football, in coaching, is sometimes I wonder if I'm at a point in my life where it's impossible to feel joy. And I don't know if that's a symptom of PTSD, but
Yeah.
I certainly feel like I never experienced true joy. The closest that I come to it is when I'm spending time with my grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, there's, I have to protect them at all costs.
Yeah.
And so that sometimes keeps me from enjoying the moment, because I'm more worried about them getting hurt or someone trying to hurt them, or, something like that.
First, I always forget that you're that old to have grandkids.
3 of them.
So there's that. But no, that is a symptom. And one of the things I was going to talk about is just like there's 4 main categories of criteria when you're looking at PTSD. The first thing is there has to be a traumatic event or events that happen like that, or you witnessed it, something like that. Yeah. So that's number 1. So then the first part that we look at is intrusive thoughts. So are you having nightmares, or are you having thoughts that just come out of nowhere that pop in your head? You weren't even thinking about what's happened to you, but all of a sudden there it is. So intrusion is a big one. Mm-hmm. Avoidance is the other piece. So if you're consciously avoiding people, places, things, conversations, because
3 for 3.
We got high scores in here.
right?
Do you know me?
Because that will cause you to feel worse, right? Or just stuff you don't want to think about. And then the negative thoughts and cognition that comes with it. One question I ask every client is, do you have trouble feeling positive things? And they're like, So looking at most of the time when I ask people, do you just feel kind of numb most of the time? Not really sad, not really happy, just kind of there? That is a huge, yes, I do. 100%, yes, I do. Sometimes it goes up and down, depending, but that emotional state of numbness tends to persist quite a bit.
So I never really thought of mine as numbness necessarily, just like I'm just doing life. Like there's not an up or down, it's just, as sometimes people will throw something at me that I think that they feel like is going to throw me into a crisis, and I'm just like, oh. And then other times, something that shouldn't be a crisis. I had a guy, a good close friend of mine, TJ, tell me there was a treadmill broken, and it had been broken for like a week, and I didn't know it. And I said, I wonder how long this treadmill's been broken. He's like, over a week. And I said, bro, how you didn't tell me? And he looked at me and as serious as could be, looked me right in the eyes and said, because you are the worst kill the messenger I have ever met.
It's so
And,
true.
and I don't want to be that, but sometimes little things, it's like, I can't handle one more problem right now. And it's not, and I do. I always handle it. We always get it taken care of, but that
Handling is a broad term.
that first instant rush of one more thing.
Yeah.
One more freaking thing to take care of.
And that lends into the little fourth, and that's changes in arousal hyperactivity. So
You're going to have to explain that one.
yeah, so you guys have mentioned it, hypervigilance, always being on alert. I can't stop. Alert. always looking at your surroundings. That can be being very jumpy. So if someone comes up behind you, you're like, your body will react. Even if it's your kid or your grandkid, doesn't matter. You're still just like, at first. That's where you can't really concentrate comes in. Irritability and anger, and then poor sleep are kind of the ones off the top of my head I can think of. So when you think of those 4 categories, that combined with the traumatic event or events, and then how long you've had it, is really the basis of PTSD in a nutshell.
So what's going to cure me, Doc?
Nothing.
You just give me a checklist
just
and
you.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, so a few different things. However, not a doctor. But so I think it's great that you mentioned that you started therapy. I really do.
What's crazy about that is like I went in there on my own and I was like, so they did the intake one and I'm like, all right, so what's up? Like, I'll see you tomorrow. And they're like, no, it's going to be about like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was like, after everything I just said, 2 or 3 weeks, like, you sure about that? And they're just like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll just go figure it out for 2 or 3 more weeks.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the mental health system in general is pretty overburdened with way more need than people.
Yeah.
And so you'll run into that quite a bit, particularly depending on geographic location and the agency. It can be pretty bad. Myself, I'm booked out about a month. So if I meet someone, I end up, honestly, I cut others, which that's not what I'd like to do, but sometimes people are so severe, you really need to. Or I purposely don't schedule anyone from 8 to 9 because I don't like seeing people that early. But someone that needs it, I would put them in at the 8 o'clock slot and, try to work through it. Because from what you've described, really, every week therapy is probably going to be the most effective. One thing I would recommend is in the interim, I don't know if you're much of a reader. I know, yeah.
I think we established in episode 1 he doesn't know how to read. That's not true. He's a very good reader.
I was going to say, luckily, the books I'm about to tell you have Audible.
Oh,
and so that's actually how I've done it. I'm clinical books I'm not very good at focusing on, but Audible, when I'm driving or something like that, my ADHD, it's the perfect mix because I'm still having to focus on traffic, but I can listen to what they're saying. So The Body Keeps the Score is my absolute favorite book about trauma in general. Another one is What Happened to You. And so I recommend those two so highly.
Say the names of those again. The first one?
The Body Keeps the Score.
The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
And the second one?
What Happened to You.
Is that like a question or a statement?
it's the title of the book.
Yes.
I know, but does it have a question mark at the end or an exclamation point?
It is it's a question mark.
Okay.
They started learning that instead of saying what's wrong with you, really looking at what's happened to you matters more in the conversation, because typically when you look at what's happened to you, it all ends up making sense.
I like it.
Yeah.
So, reading books, exercise, therapy, those are very important things you believe to deal with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Are there, and I'm sure there's a plethora, but are there like specific medications just for PTSD?
Yes. So a lot of the medications have different uses, but there are specific medications. One, now that you've brought it up, I can't think of the name. It'll come back to me.
There's so many.
But it specifically works really well for nightmares. So it is often prescribed for people that have nightmares. I call it the nightmare med, which is why I can't think of the name, because when I'm talking to clients about it, I'm like, hey, ask the doc if they think the nightmare med would be good for you.
Does it start with an S?
Seroquel.
No, but that does help quite a bit.
Well, not Seroquel. I'm on a different one. I can't think of the name.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So I'm kind of, anti-medication for me.
Prazosine.
Yep, that's the one. There it is.
Wonder how I
That's
knew
the
that.
medicine.
I'm anti-medication just because I don't like chemically induced changes to my mind.
Sure. But you do it all the time. You're chemically changing your mind with everything you do.
Okay.
But I get,
Yeah, Chad.
and again, I'm not a med pusher,
Right,
but
right.
I'm just saying.
But I'm
realistically.
not like, when I say anti, I'm not anti-medication. I'm not anti-mental health professionals at all. I just don't want to take another pill.
Yeah.
I'm already taking blood pressure medicine and cholesterol medicine, and doctors have threatened me with other medications, and I'm like, nope, I'm going to fix this myself, and I do through diet and exercise. As I get older, that's harder and harder to do because at one time I had done that with the blood pressure, and at one time I had done that with the cholesterol, and slowly they're on the list. But night terrors is a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
About once a week, my wife will wake me up saying, "You're screaming again." And in the moment, I could tell you exactly what was going on, but I'm just like, "Oh, sorry," and I don't want to give her. She doesn't need to hear the things going on in my brain while I'm sleeping, so I just go back to sleep, and by morning I can never remember what it was that was causing me to have that terror. When you talk about nightmares, what do you know the difference between a nightmare and like a night terror?
So this one I'm not as well versed in, but typically night terrors are so bad that you are having the external stimuli that people can recognize. So when Julie sees and hears that, that's more so. Nightmares are typically more internal. Okay. That's the only difference I can really think of.
Mine usually, I have nightmares as well where I'm asleep and I wake up with anxiety because of something that, I was dreaming about. But most of the time anymore, it's full out screaming. And generally, it's not being able to do something. One I can remember is, and it's, somebody's going to analyze this and say I've got some kind of crazy, because I don't have any idea why I dreamed of this. But I dreamed that there was a pool and I was in a boat with a woman behind me, a man and a woman in front of me. It was like a small boat. And they got out of the boat and they went up on this catwalk, and they weren't telling me and the lady what they were doing. And all of a sudden they start shooting down into the water. And there's a person and he's coming towards the boat. And they keep missing him. So I jump in the water because I'm like, well, then I'm just going to kill this guy myself to save us. He's obviously a predator. I recognize him as a predator. I jump into the water to fight this guy. The lady behind me is so terrified that she jumps in and wraps herself around my back and my neck, and now I can't fight this guy because she's climbing all over me. And that's when I was screaming, get off. And that was when my wife was like, you're screaming again. That's a recent one that I can remember because it was so vivid. It really makes no sense, but it generally, when I have these types of dreams, it's someone is a threat and I'm trying to fight them and my arms I can't swing or I can't run. I'm incapable of doing the thing that I need to do to handle the problem.
Yeah, so some people do have the very vivid nightmares of just what's already happened to them. But then sometimes
That's never happened to me.
Sometimes, that'd be
wild dream.
You
right?
need to do a whole episode if that really happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, but then there's the other case where it's things like you've mentioned, and I think when you really look at it, a lot of it is that you're in a helping profession by nature. You help people, so that loss of control to be able to do what needs to be done or to do what is good for people, that's hard. And so whether it be a woman holding you back or even in real life, what I could have done or should have done differently, those tend to stick with you. And honestly, that's a lot of what I talk about in therapy. I like to use, it's a specific modality called cognitive processing therapy. And everyone has stuck points around trauma in general. And so when you really analyze those stuck points and see where those thoughts are around it, that's usually the spot where you have to kind of, it's not always just seeing something traumatic in general. And we've talked about that. You've told me times where you've seen things that I would never even want to see. And then you just went and like had lunch after.
Yeah.
It's the other times maybe where things didn't happen as you want or you had no control over them. Those, anecdotally, tend to stick harder.
Yeah, I when I analyze it myself, I think of it as a feeling of being inadequate.
Yeah.
Or as Matt talked about on when we did his episode of the podcast here, called it imposter syndrome, where he felt like he was never good enough, like he was just faking it till he made it.
So, like, what you're talking about, your nightmares, like, mine are similar to that, but I'm able to, like, get there, but I never do enough. Like, I'll get to that scene, and my mag's loaded, and I'm shooting, and, they're not doing enough. Like, I can't eliminate the threat, and everything I pull out, every priority list of things I need to do to eliminate that threat isn't working. So I always feel like I can never do enough. So I've had so many of those dreams that I tried to understand. Every single scenario comes down to like, I never do enough. Like, I'm a burden to the team, you know? And like, gosh, like it's all the time. It's all the time. So where like I had to figure out, like I had so many of the dreams where I had to figure out, like wrote them down, and I figured out the common theme of like, I have this imposter syndrome. And like, that's where I got it from, is analyzing my dreams.
Man,
you know?
I'm impressed.
I went through a lot to get there.
I mean, that's amazing, though, that you did that.
Yeah.
I can't remember mine enough to write them down. By morning, do you forget a lot of them?
I do, but some of them are so like impactful, you know, or so real. Not saying that yours aren't. I'm just saying that like it will ruin my day sometimes, or it will impact my day so bad that I'll like, in the beginning I try to forget about it, but like I just have them so much to where it's like, all right, why am I constantly having these same type of dreams? You know, so I just try to figure it out. I don't know.
So, Otto, is that something that you deal with, or not really?
Two things. So when I go to bed at night, I mean, it's like clockwork. I can't go to sleep for a while. Then I go to sleep. I'm up at 2, rolling around. Then I go back to sleep. I'm back up at 4. I'm up at 4, 7 days a week. So I have trouble with that, like not getting a full night's sleep. I don't usually dream at all. You know, more than anyone, I've been going through some pretty big changes in my life. And it's affected me a lot. If I do dream, I don't remember them, but I wake up feeling rough feelings, you know what I mean, out of nowhere. But last week I had a dream. I was here. I remember it right now, which is weird because I never remember them. I was here and I was walking around, and we had a phone, like a gym phone, with a cord and all that. And it just kept ringing and ringing and ringing. And for some reason I didn't answer it for a while. I was like, oh, he can get it. It kept ringing. I pick it up, and it was a lady. It was my mother asking for me by name. My mom died, like October 15th, 2017. She died.
Sorry, man.
What's the date today?
13th.
Yeah. So, and she asked for me by name, and I was like my heart dropped, and I was like, Mom, where are you? Like, it's me, you know, where are you? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, well, can you get a ride here? I'm at Indie Fitness. Can I get a ride to you? Like, I don't understand, Mom. Like, you don't want to see me. And she was just like, can't you just be grateful you're talking to me? And then I just woke up bawling. Didn't go to work the next day for half the day, just like trashed, dude. Like, I haven't had, since she died, I haven't really had dreams about her, or even, you know what I mean? I had, honestly, I had to look up. I was so tricked off on drugs when she died that like I had to look up what year and month after I got sober, And then I had to look it up again just a couple weeks ago, like when I had that dream. That's why I know the date to the T, because I just Googled it. Yeah, so, and I mean, it wrecked me, dude. Like, it was so real. It was her voice and it was her everything. And then, like, with all the stuff I've been going through, like, relationship stuff, and I've been kind of a dick to Chad and stuff. And,
He probably deserves it.
Most of the time.
so, yeah, we both, yeah. Anyways, but yeah, like, that was my first, I don't remember any, like, dreams before that at all for years. At all. I never had drug using dreams like people always talking about. Like, yeah, man, I got so high on my dream last night, and now I'm triggered. I'm just like, bro, I don't even think about this stuff. So, but this was legit. Like, I feel like I talked to my mom last week.
You know, we can stay in here as long as we would like. We've got more time if we want, but I want to just take a pause here just to say this. I appreciate you guys being open and honest, because there are so many men out there, and hopefully a lot of them will watch this, who are not willing to talk about the things that mess with their mind.
Yeah.
And I believe that everyone has something. Some are more severe than others, in my opinion, but we're not here to judge my trauma is worse than your trauma. You know, it's not that. It's more of
A community.
find someone to talk to. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be, come talk to us. Like,
Yeah.
if you got that kind of trauma and you're afraid to talk to somebody, I'll listen. I'm a good listener. I'm not an expert at all, but I can listen to people. I try to be that for a lot of people, because there have been many that have been that for me. Megan has been that for me. My buddy TJ, who used to work in therapy as well, he has been that for me. And
She's free from 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. So
Write it
don't
down.
let her fool you.
Just show up.
Yeah. I work out of my house mostly, so
Okay.
heads up would be good.
But, and thank you for agreeing to come in here and listen to our screwed up stories. But, it is something that it's rare to find three people that are willing to go on a podcast and talk about all their trauma. And I kind of snuck this in on Matt. I didn't really
Yeah,
tell
I
him.
had no idea.
I didn't
Really?
really tell him what we were going to do. Oh, we talked
Thanks.
about that there might be a thing eventually.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and then last week when you were sick, I said the therapist was sick. I think he might have got the.
I was like, what?
Why is Otto not feeling well?
So, kind of maybe talk a little bit about why people don't want to talk about it, other than, law enforcement. I'm afraid you're going to take your guns. But I mean,
Yeah. When you're talking about your dream, and actually all of you, one theme kind of stuck out to me, and that's the guilt and shame piece. It's not talked about enough, but a lot of times we do have those feelings of I didn't do good enough, or I'm a bad person. I notice it a lot with people maybe that are involved with criminal justice, taking on a lot of shame because of what they did. And that's not to say they shouldn't feel some degree of guilt, but guilt and shame are two different things. And they tend to take that shame on and carry that as I am a bad person because I did a bad thing, instead of I did a bad thing, but I'm still a decent person. Those things tend to become blurred. Same with drug use. I'm a terrible person because I use drugs, instead of I use drugs, but I'm still a decent person.
Yeah.
So I think that. What was your question?
just kind of
Yes.
like why. The question was, why
How'd I
do?
do people not want to talk about?
Oh yeah, guilt and shame. Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's
you
a big
answered it,
piece
yeah.
of it. And then, I mean, every time I talk to someone, they're always like, "Are you analyzing me?" And I think they're very worried that I'm going to judge them. I don't know. You guys said you were nervous. I don't know if that was part of it. You thought maybe I would be judgmental, or I don't know. But the truth of the matter is, it takes a lot more courage to talk about it than to just keep covering it up, because stuffing it can be kind of more it's not easy for you to deal with the effects, but stuffing it's way easier than actually saying like, this happened to me and I feel a lot of shame about it. That's what gets your emotions really going.
I was so excited after I went to this conference and they had a speaker there. I don't remember her name. She was a police officer from around the Houston area, and she had been involved in 2 major incidents, one where she got shot and one where she was put in a position where she had to shoot someone.
Is that the one you called me
And,
on the way
and I
home?
called Megan, a few minutes after I left just to tell her about this. And one of she kind of used the theme of a boxing match and going different rounds. And she talked about all the rounds where, in the beginning, people were there for her. And then after kind of the excitement, lack of a better word, the excitement died down, she was left to deal with this without the help of all those people. And she talked about who we have in our corner. I'm very fortunate to have a great spouse who I can tell anything. I still hold back. I mean, I don't want her to know all the things that are in my brain, but you have a trainer, you have a cut man, using the boxing analogy, you have all those people, and I have that in you. I have that in Otto for sure, because we tell each other a lot of things that we probably wouldn't tell anyone else, because we trust that we're not going to be judged for what we say. Do you think it's important, to have those people? I believe that it is.
Absolutely. I think you need a teammate, at least one, or somebody in your corner.
Yeah.
At least one person, one support person. And this is different but kind of same. They talk about kids that really do well. The big thing is having one supportive adult in their life. So I think, everybody needs that support person, whether it's your family or your friends that you made family. They're important. Or a professional, I get paid to hold that in.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's looked as a negative because
Because of business.
yes, but along with that business, I have things that, I could lose my license if I talk about it to someone that shouldn't hear it. So there are some safeties in there too.
I think anyone who would judge you for getting paid for doing a job that's silly
Happens
to me.
way
but-
more than you would think then.
Yeah.
Especially in the addiction group. I got that almost nightly, that I'm only there because I'm getting paid. It's like, yes, I want to be there from 6 to 9 p.m. with you all, just to collect a paycheck. I do
Making
believe there's easier
peanuts,
ways.
Yeah.
What I see with the military guys, or just specifically the people that I know, is they have a ton of trauma, and it was masked because we were all there together, and it we seemed like we were normal. Our drinking problems were normal because that guy starts drinking at 9 o'clock in the morning. Why not? So it just seemed normal.
Trauma bonding? Is that?
And then,
Yeah.
Another thing is when we are told we need to talk about it, it's like, I'm not going to talk to them. They don't know what I've been through.
Yeah.
And if I wouldn't have met, there's 2 friends that I've met since I've moved to Independence. Moises Rivera, he's a pastor in Cherryville, and Zach Lum. I was very negative about my past in the military. Before them, you would have never known I was in the military. I was so ashamed of it. But they kind of brought out that good side of me and made me realize the good things that I did. And what allowed that to happen was I got a little bit of courage and opened up to them. And just because they didn't know the military jargon that we have, or they didn't experience the same things as me, they still were a person and had feelings and beliefs, and they still had good morals, to where just because we didn't do the same thing, they could still steer me in a different direction than. So kind of in the gym as well, is you see a person that doesn't work out, I don't want to go to the gym, and they're on this really bad trajectory, or just because they're not going losing weight, or they're not up in their numbers, they're not on that same plane as they were before. Just because they plateau out a little bit, that's a positive, micro victories, you know, instead of like, I didn't lose 20 pounds in the first month or something like that. It's like, okay, but you didn't gain 20 pounds from your previous, you know, habits, you know? So like Mo and Zach really, I had to take that step of courage, and they were very, like open. They let me talk, you know, and like just that has changed my life drastically, you know. So anyone that's going through something, it's never gonna change unless you take that first step, you know. Like we could schedule, like my wife could schedule me 100 visits with you, right? But it's never gonna change unless I'm willing to do it. You know what I'm saying? So like, you could have every single resource on the table, but none of them are gonna work unless like you open up and you are courageous enough to take that first step and talk about those hard things and difficult conversations. And that's what Zach and Mo were to me when I first moved here, you know? So now I got military flags in my house, and now I'm a little bit more proud of it, definitely.
You know, I just want to say this. I thought about this after your time here before, was I don't talk much about the Marine Corps at all.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why is because, like, when you go to an event, like different sporting events, this happens, and different things where they'll say, if you're a veteran, you know, we would like you to stand up.
I never
never stand up.
Yeah.
But part of the reason for me is because, you know, I look at guys like you who were, now, I mean, I served in the Marine Corps for 4 years, active duty, honorable discharge, good conduct medal. You know, I did the things that I was supposed to do. But I was in the Marine Corps between 1993 and 1997.
Okay.
Nothing happened. There was nowhere for me to go. And so I sometimes feel like my service didn't count because I didn't go to war. I didn't fight these battles. I wasn't over there, you know, doing things.
We were able to be so successful over there because of guys like you. Do you understand that?
No?
Like for real. You guys taught us your guys' tactics and procedures, which we brought to Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm getting goosebumps already. So like, we would have failed if it wasn't for the history, like who taught you guys, you know, like you guys, like, I don't know who your boot camp instructors were or who your seniors were, but they could have been like Vietnam era guys, you know, like they taught you guys that, then you taught us that, and then we taught the next. So like, it's your service, just because you didn't have the opportunities, like you still volunteered on your own, and you still like put your name on the list. Like, I will go sacrifice everything for my country. And just because someone had more opportunities to, like, we call it like a pissing contest. And like, that's what I hate about the military, is because like you see everybody's stack and ribbon stack, and like you can always point out, that guy's been on more deployments than me, that guy has more ribbons than me. It's like, it's not a measuring contest at all. Like, we did the same thing. We both signed the piece of paper and were willing to give up everything, you know? So just because I had one or two more opportunities doesn't mean that you wouldn't have done more than what I did. You know, so like, don't ever look down on yourself because you didn't have an opportunity. Like, you were ready for the opportunity.
I want to tell Megan what I found to be one of the most, I don't know if amazing or things that Matt said when he was in here, was that he felt like he needed to be killed in action to be a success.
Yeah. Well, like, I wasn't suicidal, or I wasn't running out in the middle of the hallway, like, shoot me. But, like, to die in, like, a hail of gunfire, or to be in such a battle and, like, me being able to sacrifice my life for something greater. Yeah, like, so I'm not, like...
I wasn't trying to insinuate that you were suicidal.
Right. Well, I just wanted to make that clear. Like,
I thought that was, like, man, I get that. I didn't have that thought when I was a Marine, because I wasn't in those situations. But, you know, we've talked about, you know, well, this is getting deep. When law enforcement talks about school shootings, and every once in a while, you'll see a situation where the police officers did not go. They stood down the hall and waited. And Jeremy Hunsucker, who's been sat in this chair, me and him have had long talks about that, and you never know what you're going to actually do until it happens. But I know in my head, there isn't a freaking army that could stop me from going. I am not going to stand by while kids are being shot and stand back and wait on an order. I'm not doing it.
Right.
Fire me afterwards. I don't care.
Right.
And if they kill me, they'll put a statue of me out in the front of the school. You know,
Right.
but I'm going. And it has nothing to do with wanting to get shot in that or not, and, you know, they say, well, you can't get through the front doors, they're locked. I'll drive my vehicle through the side of that thing.
Right.
I'm going in. And if I'm just equipped with my handgun and a couple mags, then that's what I'm going with. If I got a stick and I'm walking by, that's what I'm going with. I'm not going to stand
If
by
they're
and
shooting
wait.
at you, they're not shooting at innocent kids.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. And like, I've seen guys that I call my mentors, you know, like the fight or flight system that we were talking about earlier. It's like, I've seen some of the best guys, you know, act so heroic and in certain situations. And the next firefight, there's someone completely different. It's just, gosh, it's so unpredictable sometimes. And I think that the more training you do on it, I think that, like, from my understanding, the more you'll fall back on your training. Because as much as we'd want to step up and go through that hallway, it's like, gosh, dude, sometimes when you're getting effective fire, like, you get, like, it's scary. And you can't think about it. You can't have an emotional reaction to it. You have to fall back on your training to where they're shooting. Once you get that tactical pause, it's like, you got to go. And then once you got to go, you got to just assume or know that number 2 guy's on your back, you know? So it's just, man, it's just a different, like, I just don't want you to look down on someone that got effective fire, that's in that trauma, that kind of, backed up, that didn't react the way that they wanted to, you know, like it's.
I don't know. I think
I understand.
I
What
don't know that I'm not going to judge them as a human being.
Yeah.
But get out of law enforcement.
Yeah, I understand what you're getting at.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go, then go work at the bus barn or something.
Right.
When we're in this position, our duty is to protect at all costs. Protect and serve. And if you're not willing to protect a child, then go do something else.
I'm still saying you complete the mission, but I'm saying that, like, if you hesitate a little bit, like, don't.
Well, I think you got to be smart about it. I'm not
Yeah,
saying you don't
that's
use
what I'm-
tactics and you don't use strategies
That's
that
what
you
I'm
just
getting at.
run at them and like, shoot me. No, I'm not saying that. But the guys in Texas, they stood in the hallway.
Yeah,
They
that's
watched the
unacceptable.
guy, the school resource officer, I believe, it might have been another police officer, watched him walk into the school with the gun.
Yeah.
I mean, run his ass over.
Yeah.
You're in a weapon. But, and it's easy to sit here and be the Monday morning quarterback.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at is like, and then like another thing, I'm sorry for cutting you off. It's
No,
like,
that's all right.
gosh, like with us in the military, ROEs, like if I shoot the wrong person, I'm going to Leavenworth, you know. And if law enforcement, if you go in there, what happens if you try to effectively fire and you hit an innocent kid on accident?
Yeah, sure.
Like all those things, if you're thinking about all that stuff, you're already done for.
You know, and that kind of brings up another point.
Like, am I going to go to jail?
I know
for
now we're
responding?
talking about military tactics and all this, but you know the first Trump assassination attempt.
Yeah.
They say that they acquired the sniper, saw him on the roof, and didn't take the shot until the shots were fired at former President Trump. There was, by all reports, there was supposed to be a sniper on that roof.
Yeah.
He's looking and he knows if I shoot this guy and this is a sniper from the police department,
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to prison, dude.
forever, right? And you look like, there's going to be conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory.
And Otto, how do cops do in prison?
I've seen a few. No, I mean,
Not well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Seen them on Tuesday, but not on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Holding somebody's pocket.
No, right. So I'm just saying legally, like there's so like just law enforcement and military guys are just so handcuffed all the time. Just let them go. You want the like we're talking about. You want the Marines to go do that objective, like take the leash off those dogs.
Yeah.
Let them go, because other than that, then you're thinking in perspective, like did I do the right thing, and then do that. Some things just haunt you forever. You know, just
Yeah, my point is I'm not standing at the end of the hallway because he has a rifle and I have a pistol. I'm not. I'm just not going to do that.
I think that you were very courageous when we did that, the active shooter training at the high school. There was that open bay, and one of the police officers like simulated got shot. You pulled him into cover, and you said, "I'm not leaving my buddy." Like, dude, I can relate to that, and I can respect that, like 100%.
Yeah. And I think they told me that was a bad thing to do.
Tactically, yeah, but realistically, it's like, you know that he has a girlfriend, you know he has kids.
And the Marine Corps taught you is no man left behind.
No, yeah, and I'm not getting into tactics
Yeah,
right now,
yeah.
but I'm saying that's honor. Like, if I was shot, I would want somebody to obviously not leave me.
Right.
You know, like, and then, like, talking about being a burden, you know, like, me treating some patients, like, I got almost addicted to the, like, oh, that's Matt right there. Like, they got a relief feeling, like, and I put my hand on them, I was like, I got you, dude. And, like, you see, like, them, they're in that fight or flight, they're like, oh my God, am I gonna die? Am I gonna die? And then it's like, I got you, dude. And then they just calm down and they relax, you know? And then I didn't want to be the guy that was like, oh, not that dude, like, get out of here.
Here comes Matt again. Just go ahead and shoot me.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh shit.
No, so I'm saying that what you did is honorable. What, you know, like, obviously there's different situations that would call for different things, but yeah, you're there
The
for
funny
your
thing
buddies.
is I vaguely even remember that, and you remember it.
Yeah, because we train that situation often.
Yeah.
You know, like, we purposely put people in that situation often to see how they react. You know, so yeah, definitely. I think.
I think my mentality was, if I leave them here, they're a sitting duck, and they could be killed easily.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to just let that happen.
Yeah, I understand.
Megan, there was a lot there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion today. Before we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you guys would like to talk about, or?
I was just going to mention, since it is gym focused, exercise really can be a good way to kind of help with PTSD because you're not dealing with adrenaline on such a big scale. So when you're learning to kind of almost dose your adrenaline, it kind of helps your body recover a little bit better. So that small dosing is really good. It helps. I mentioned cortisol briefly. It does kind of help with that. Cortisol is that stress hormone. And then the only other thing I would say is whether you go to the gym or not, trauma or not, just take opportunities for relaxation, even if it's only a minute or two. I know deep breathing is kind of a buzz thing that people are like, oh, the therapists always say to deep breathe, right? But there is something actually really restorative to deep breath if you're doing it correctly. And then I can see it in all three of you, not to call you out, and I do it too. Relax those shoulders. Like, let them fall.
Can't.
Get some of that tension out.
I got to be ready.
Quit
Gotta have some good posture, right?
Quit letting relax your shoulders, unclench your jaw a little.
He's just got a chiseled jaw.
And
see
maybe,
it.
but I think it's clenched in.
He doesn't even have a chin underneath that beard.
It's not even there. This is my chin.
And then let the chair do the work instead of holding yourself in the chair.
Who's doing that?
all of you.
Okay, yeah.
I've done
To a
this
degree.
lot of times.
You're
Well,
probably the most relaxed.
He's got the
Thank
best
you.
posture too.
Yeah.
No.
I keep looking over and then trying to mimic him, and then I get tired of it. So I'm like, man.
But I noticed that I do it all the time. I hold the tension, and then I finally notice, and I'm like, whoa. But the more you can do that, the better it is. It feels abnormal for people that are used to
So
high
bad.
stress. Yeah, you're like, this doesn't even feel good. But the more you can do it, the better.
You know, I've discovered through self-reflection that I have the, what's it called, tinnitus, or the constant ringing in my ears. And they say there's no cure for it. There are people that have literally shot themselves over the constant ringing in their ears. I have learned that a lot of mine, when I can just relax, I am literally squeezing my
Shoulder blades.
my shoulder
the
blades
traps.
together, which is causing tension on my spine, which is causing that. And when I can relax and stretch it out, it tends to really help that. That I call it the airplanes. The airplanes constantly taking off in my head.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend, exercising or not, taking a few minutes to stress or stretch.
De-stress?
Stretch. There we go.
Right.
Stretch, and or just loosen that stuff up. Things you can do that's not therapy but progressive muscle relaxation. There's 8 million YouTube. Any of that really.
You listen to it and they tell you now you release.
Yeah, like you start and you squeeze specific muscles and then let it go. Or there is just different relaxation
Like
techniques and
meditation.
apps. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really good if I'm like, hey, meditate. I'm not going to do it. My internal dialogue is way too strong. But if I can focus my attention on something more relaxing, then that's when I can actually start to do it. But if I'm just like, I'm going to zen out, it's never going to happen.
I want to say thank you for giving me a new word for the voices in my head.
Yeah.
Internal dialogue. It
Yes.
Yeah.
makes me sound not
Elegant.
as cuckoo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everybody has it. It just
Internal
depends how
dialogue.
much.
I'm elegantly fucked
So,
up.
Chad, so from starting this podcast, since one of the main things of helping with PTSD is conversating about it, have you noticed any positive or negative results from starting the podcast and actually talking about some of these signs and symptoms?
You mean in myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it's very,
Is it therapeutic?
just being honest, there's not a lot of people watching. There's not a lot of people listening. There's,
Well,
quite a
just
few.
you talking about it
but-
and getting it out.
But for us, we've discussed it because the constant has been Otto and I.
Yeah.
We have been at every one.
Yeah.
And it is very therapeutic for us
Yeah.
to talk about these things and get them out there. Somebody asked me the other day, do you really like the sound of your voice that much that you do a podcast? It has nothing to do with the sound of my voice.
Yeah.
I somewhat tend to think I sound like a cartoon character.
What episode is this one?
11 or 12, I don't know.
I still have yet to watch one.
Oh, really?
You lie. You told me you watched mine.
No. I watched the
You
clips
lied.
you
So
made.
you lied to me.
No, I didn't lie. Someone posted a part of yours
I don't know.
You
on
did?
TikTok.
Recently.
No, it was 30 minutes of it.
Oh.
All on a TikTok reel. I watched that.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't
I don't
me.
know who did it.
And then you clipped it up and
Yep.
took your stuff off of that.
Yeah, I tried to.
Yeah, so Marco must have put it on. I watched some of that a while ago, but that was it.
And I tell everybody, I felt like Matt, if you want to listen to the podcast to kind of get an idea of what it is, I would say start with
Yeah.
Matt's.
His is good, dude.
It's my favorite
Super
one, followed closely by more recently Haley.
Yeah, Haley's was good. Yeah.
Because the thing that was best about Haley's episode is she's not, and she even says this, she told me when I asked her to come on, because Haley changed her life with diet and exercise. I mean, completely not the same person. It helped her mental health. She's just a completely different person. She said, I don't want to come on because I'm not a basketball coach, or I'm not a power lifter. I've never been in the military. I have nothing to tell. And man, there were so many people that reached out to me that really got a lot from Haley's episode. In fact, I had a guy reach out to me this week who had recently, in the last year and a half, been diagnosed with a brain tumor. He was a very avid gym goer, and then he had to have multiple surgeries and things of that nature. And after I asked him to come on, he said, I don't think I could do it. And after listening to Haley, he said, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I feel like I need, it'll help me deal with everything by talking it out. So it's not just been therapeutic for me and him to talk, but I think everyone who's been on here has been able to tell their story. Feels like they got some stuff off their chest.
Good.
We always interview someone who, like, when you say we're going to interview someone, and then I don't really know much about their story. A few of them I do, but then it's always like super. I'm like, holy shit! Like with yours, I was like, wow.
Yeah, after yours, Otto came to me and he's like, "Man, I was locked in. I could have
didn't say
listened
much.
to him talk for hours about this."
Yeah,
stuff.
I was like, I didn't say much because I wanted to hear more. You know what I mean? I was like, I'd rather not interrupt you and just let it go.
You are so. This isn't Kiss Matt's ass hour, I promise, but you are so humble.
Yeah, I was gonna say humble.
That I didn't even know. I was trying to. I had external factors that day. My granddaughter's birthday was later, and I had just lost my sister, and I was dealing with a lot right then. But I was trying to speed you up because I had no idea that you went to Bud's training. I had zero idea.
Yeah.
That was so like when I was trying to like, well, let's move on to the next part, and then you're like, but then I was at Bud, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like I've known this guy for a long time, and I never knew that about him.
I told you I was very intrinsic and I was very ashamed to where like if you didn't meet me, or even if you did meet me, like it wasn't one of the things that I talked about.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm very like intrinsic, so I just let other people. I was like the gray man in the room, you know, like I'm physically there, but like I'm not like actually there. And like sometimes I could be in a full room and still be like lonely, you know, still feel alone. You know?
Oh yes.
So
yeah.
like, and who wants to hear like me? I'm just like, there's so many way better and way cooler people or more accomplished. No one wants to hear my dumb story.
That's not true.
You know?
And in fact, I was just getting ready to say, I want to wrap up here, but I wanted to say this to you is like, you know, Chance has been gone a lot because he's coaching football and they're busy and they're gone for so long and they're not here on Sundays. They have meetings and tape and things like that. I'll invite you anytime you want to come sit and be our third host with somebody. Anytime you would like, you just let us know. We'll make it happen.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So, and next week, I just want to give everybody kind of like a heads up of next week's episode. We're going to have Haley Schulteis. I'm not sure Schulteis, how to say her last name. We'll have her tell us that. She's a nurse practitioner, and she's going to come in and talk to us about hormones and hormone levels and what causes drops and what
She's
areas.
the owner of the Brio Med Spa.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. And so we're going to talk to her, and I'm super interested in that. It kind of goes along with the mental
labs
health.
taken, and I have very low testosterone.
Oh man, I'd hate to see what you like if you had
Well,
leveled up.
The
You know what I mean? I'd be
VA,
scared,
the
really
VA said
scared.
the amount of stress that I was exposed to just tanked my system.
Yep.
And to where I'm like like a 13-year-old boy.
Right.
Like I'm like I think the most recent one was less than 200 or something
Wow.
like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is that. Have you ever looked into that place or heard about it? That's
Never.
what they do.
Never, I just ignore it.
Yeah, we'll talk. We're going to talk to her.
Work out harder. Stop being a baby.
It's going to be. I think I am on TRT. Have been for 4 or 5 years now, and I think there's a stigma behind that as well that people don't want to talk about it. Like some people would never say their testosterone was at a 200 level because they make them that makes them feel like less of a man because we're judged by our testosterone. I will say then, and we'll get into great depth about it next week.
Come test me, bro.
Yeah. I think it is the single greatest decision I ever made in my life to get on
Really?
TRT. I can't think of a close second, really, when it comes to my health and my well-being.
Marrying your wife.
My health and my well-being, not my.
Is it whoa?
No, and she knows how I feel about it, and you know, she agrees that it changed me. But we'll get into all that next week.
Yep.
Megan, thank you so much for coming on and
Thank you.
putting up with us, and we might have some more mental health stuff come up in the future we'd like to talk about, maybe a different subject. And anytime you have something that you'd like to come in and talk about, we'll be willing to talk to you. So appreciate it, everybody. We'll see you next week, and peace out.